Okay, you ready? Yeah. All right. Jerry, 24 years together. When a fan looks at the 24 years, they see hits, they see concerts, they see tours. When you look back, what do you see?
Oh, God! I see, well, a large part of my life I've spent doing something which has turned out to be more fun than I thought it was going to be. And it's lasted way longer than I imagined it might. And it's taken me places that I would never have ever imagined. You know, so it's, I mean, it's hard to separate myself from, you know what I mean, from the experience. I mean, after all, it is my life. You know, it's like for me, it's 24 years of all kinds of stuff of you know, like everybody goes through. You know, life and death and kids growing up and you know, stuff happening. And the Grateful Dead has been this one constant, continuous source for during the whole thing. So it's a big chunk, you know. It stopped being stuff like a career or a band or even a family and that kind of stuff a long time ago. It's gone way past that, you know, by now.
You know, when you first started, I wouldn't exactly call the Grateful Dead mainstream. No, yeah. But now here it is. I mean, Don Henley's got lyrics about Deadhead stickers on a Cadillac. Yeah. You've got you've had a top 10 single. Are the Grateful Dead mainstream in 1989?
I don't know whether we're mainstream or not, but we've certainly become a kind of a cultural artifact of some kind. You know, I mean, it's hard to tell whether or not our music is accessible to the large America, but we always thought it was. You know, I mean, I'm the wrong person to ask that question, really. You know, we'll see. I mean, if this next record does really well, then it's yeah. Then we're somewhere. If we're not in the mainstream, we're pretty close to it. You know.
How did Touch of Grey, that success, change the band? Or did it? It
didn't really change it very much. No, mostly it made it so that now having lunch with record company guys is very comfortable. You know? They're really nice. You know, and, you know that's probably the main in terms of the quality of life. You know, it really it's hard for us to separate our regular slow continuous success with the, you know what I mean, that where that record. By the time that came out, we were already doing pretty well, you know. So it's really hard to gauge it, whether it's added lots of new people to our audience or, you know, it's just there's no way to measure it. So it's more a kind of a surprise, kind of a left field thing, you know. But it hasn't really affected us too much. I think, if anything, it's given us more confidence about making records. I mean, I feel like, well, maybe, you know, hey, you know.
You know, I read a lot of definitions of, or the definition of deadheads. What's Jerry Garcia say? What's a deadhead?
About deadheads?
Yeah.
Oh, God. You're really getting me today, aren't you? Deadheads, well, my experience with them is again, it's hard to characterize. It's been a long time now, and there's been lots of them, and they come in all shapes and sizes and forms, and they're everything from street people to solid professionals. You know, they're all over the place. They're on Capitol Hill. You know, they're in part of a heart and lung team. You know, out in Sacramento. They're everywhere. They've permeated society. You know, they've become mainstream in a way. I mean, there's a lot of mainstream deadheads. Even the New York City Police Department's got a lot of deadheads, and they're all over the place. So it's like that's kind of fun. You know, you meet people who are. You know, the mayor of Milwaukee, you know, was comfortable enough to bring him and his wife come to the show. You know, hey, I'm the mayor of Milwaukee. You know, oh sure, you know, yeah, me too. You know, no, I am really. He says, and he brings out the card. The guy really was the mayor of Milwaukee and a really nice guy. And it's kind of, I mean, that part of it is kind of encouraging that it's not something that's just. It's like there is this little culture of people who identify themselves by something that they like and something that's a good thing in their lives. It's broad. You know, that's the deadheads are not. They don't fit into a category real easy. You know.
One thing, you take care of your fans in terms of the way they can get tickets through the mail, newsletters. There seems to be a genuine love for the fans of the Grateful Dead from the band.
Yeah, well, they're paying the rent, you know. I mean, they're the ones who keep this happening as much as we are. You know what I mean? They've invented us just like we've invented them in a way. I mean, you know, there's a mutual thing happening there. I mean, but that's true with every band, really. It's just whether or not the band chooses to deal with it or not. Really, I mean, you don't exist without your audience. It's that simple, really. So, I mean, our audience has been particularly giving in that they aren't. It's not like a showbiz audience, you know what I mean? They come as much to be there and enjoy each other probably as for any specific concert. I mean, they don't come to hear us do our hits. You know, we don't have any hits. You know, they come to hear us do whatever we're going to do, or to try stuff, or to hear something new, or to hear us do old stuff, or to hear us even have a bad night. You know, sometimes. And it's still, the experience is still rewarding for them for reasons that may not have anything to do with the music, but just the idea of being someplace and celebrating their own existence or something like that. You know?
In the early days, the Grateful Dead, there were times they were saying that you guys, I won't say broke, but weren't rolling in dough.
Broke is good.
Yeah.
Broke says it.
But somewhere in there, you're very organized with the tickets, with T-shirts, with newsletters. Where did that organization, how did that begin?
Well, it evolved very slowly from that thing of being broke, you know. I mean, hey, we're broke, you know, somewhere back there. Actually, from very early on, we were doing pretty well at supporting ourselves. I mean, it really, I mean, once you're making a living, you know, everything above and beyond that is extra. So we started making a living before we even made our first record. We were doing pretty well and playing at the ballroom scenes in San Francisco, the Fillmore and the Avalon in those days. So we were doing it. We were making a living. Going through the thing of starting to. We got into trouble in a couple of situations because of stuff like spending too much money producing a record. Now, when you're not making all that much, but just making enough to get by, and all of a sudden you have a record, a bill, back in those days, like of $150,000 to make a record, you're broke, you know, then you're in the hole. And then that starts to look scary because it looks like more than you can, and then there's all the tax stuff and everything that goes along with it. So everything is compounded by just complexity. So after going through a couple of those kind of scenes, it got to be important that we at least keep our scene straight as far as the taxes are concerned and all the rest of that. As far as the way the outside world deals with us, you know what I mean? We definitely don't want to have to go to jail for stuff like taxes, you know? And so it just makes sense, you know. You're dealing in that world, you can't avoid it. So we've just made an effort to try to keep that as together as possible. And then the rest of it, we've just evolved. I mean, it used to be that we would have managers and so forth who would say, well, manage us, you know, or, you know, manage our affairs or whatever, but it doesn't really work. Not for us. We're all too, we recognize that we need to have a hands-on kind of relationship to it. So we have meetings where we talk about all the stuff that comes up, and everybody hates them. You know, I mean, everybody, you know, we complain about them and moan and groan, and everybody hates it. But we do it, you know, and it isn't really too hard, but you have to do it. So that's one of those things that just experience, you know, that's the best teacher of all in these things. And after, you know, you make the same mistake 10 years in a row, you know, it's pretty soon, oh, I get it, you know. It's been kind of like that for us, really. You know, this stuff is mostly errors. It's a comedy of errors, really, and eventually you'll learn to do things be more thorough and so forth. All stuff that we don't want to do, but, you know.
It seems like with many bands in concert, they reproduce the record exactly. It seems like the word for the Grateful Dead in concert is improvised. Yeah,
we would probably reproduce the record exactly if we were disciplined enough to do it. But it's just, you know, forget it. It's out of the question. It doesn't, you know. So what happens instead is, I mean, by now our fans realize they're not going to hear the record. They may hear the songs, but they definitely won't hear the record. But that's okay. I mean, really, from a musician's point of view, a record is kind of like a painting. You know, it's you have a chance to really study all the detail, and you can be sure that everything that happens in the song has the benefit of supervision. So you can pay attention to incredible detail. When you're playing live, it's a whole lot. It's a whole other experience. It's like a snapshot. You know, it's like a Polaroid. What's there is what's there, and the moment provides new things. Sometimes they're better, sometimes they're worse, but they're really two different things. It's like apples and oranges almost. You know, it's just. For us, that's been our big trouble making records. Really, is we've never been able to get that live energy into the grooves. You know, and we go in the studio and we might be able to get it to sound superficially okay, but it's just no life. You know, it'd be like, you know, so that's been the big mystery for us. But we're starting to get to where we can do that now. We're starting to understand what it takes to make that happen.
Many bands, they hear the words bootleg tapes, they go crazy. But the Dead sort of promote the trading and the hoarding and the passing around of bootleg performances.
Well, I don't know about the hoarding, trading, and passing. The thing is that we don't discourage the tapers, but it's just because it's a reality. You know, that even if you try to prevent people from taping, they're going to tape anyway. It's just there's just no way to stop it, really. So for us, it's one of those things of. First of all, they're paying to hear the music, you know, and I mean, after we're finished with it, you know, it's gone, you know, so why shouldn't they take the music that they paid for home with them? I mean, I don't see any problem with that, really, and I think that probably there's a superstition, anyway, in the music business that if you let people tape your music, somehow they won't buy your records. I don't think that's true. I mean, at least it doesn't appear to be true as far as the Grateful Dead is concerned. That is to say that if people buy tickets, they also buy records, whether they tape or not. And the fact that there are enormous numbers of tapes out there in circulation, I mean, it doesn't seem to affect, you know, it doesn't seem to affect us in any kind of serious way, except that we have a reputation for being people who are lenient about taping. You know, that's about the most serious repercussion. And of course, there's the thing of that. I mean, if you're worried about concealing your mistakes, then you might have a legitimate thing about preventing people from taping. Like if you decide that your performances have to be absolutely perfect before you want them, you know. But I mean, realistically, you know, nobody has absolutely perfect performances. It just doesn't have, not in this world, you know. So since people are going to be taping, I mean, it's just. It's one of those things where I disagree with the traditional approach to it. That's all, you know. And it's we've been doing this for a long time. It doesn't seem to have bothered anybody. You know?
Tell me about the new album, Built to Last.
It's pretty good. It's got some good songs on it. It's kind of hard to talk about it. It's just I hoped that they would have released it by now, but they're releasing it on Halloween, which is, I guess, cute, you know. This is our first record where it's truly a studio record. It isn't partly live and partly studio. Like In the Dark we approached it as though it were a live record, even though it wasn't in front of an audience or anything. We still the methodology was basically live recording. This record, we approached it just as though, I mean, totally from the studio. So it's totally it's really constructed from the songs out. So it's a different approach than what we've used in the past, but it seems more musical, and it seems like it has more energy and more discipline. So from my point of view, from a producer's point of view, this is a really good record from the Grateful Dead. I mean, by really good record, I mean this will hold up compared to anything else in the world of, you know, professional recording. You know, it's at that level. So this is like one of those ones where I don't have to go, ooh, you know, don't listen too hard to these cuts, because, you know, this everything on this record is really nicely done, and I'm pretty happy with it. whether or not anybody likes it or not, that, of course, that's a whole other matter.
Unto a Foolish Heart, the new video.
Yeah.
Tasty video.
It's nice.
A lot of old images mixed in with the new, and there's a dedication or a thank you at the end.
Yeah.
Tell me how you mix the images and tell me about the thank you as well.
Well, the idea came from, I guess, Gary Gutierrez, who's the director, and Hunter, who wrote the lyrics, of course, got together and talked about it, what kind of imagery they thought they wanted. Well, Hunter wanted to avoid any specific tie-ins with the lyrics. He didn't want it to be literal. And Gary had a sort of a notion about a kind of a proscenium stage, a kind of an old-time Victorian stage setting, and also about stagecraft, just like the look of the old Malays films, which are used in the video. These are a pair of French guys who made movies around the turn of the century, and they were the first guys to actually do special effects in movies. They had explosions and disappearing stuff, and they did actual camera tricks, backing up the camera and ghosts and people disappearing and all that stuff. They were the first ones to take advantage of that part of cinematography. They sort of invented, really, the early vocabulary of cinema magic. And so this owes a certain amount of its flavor to this sort of late Victorian kind of naive, theatrical, stuff, and it's just one of those things that Hunter has always loved this kind of stuff, and Gary Gutierrez is also a fan of it too, and me too, and it's just it sort of tumbled into place. And also with Gary, when working with him, we always give him ridiculous restrictions. It's like, okay, Gary, you can make. We want you to do the video, but you can only have the band for 20 minutes. So he has to work within things like that. Really limited situations. So he doesn't get as much cooperation as probably would make sense. But the band is like very difficult on photographers, and in any kind of situation that requires performing, it's not our forte. So he has to put up with all this stuff, but he's very good with us, and we've worked with him before. He did Touch of Grey too, so everybody has a lot of confidence in his work. So, and he also did the animation for our Grateful Dead movie from the 70s, which is real neat stuff.
Yeah.
So everybody trusts him. So he's an easy guy to work with. And anyway, it came out pretty good. Most of the time, they don't like to have to cut to smoke.
Ready? Okay. With the growing, even bigger popularity of the band, with some of the Deadheads, there have been a few problems along the road, but the band has really responded to that.
Well, there's no problem that's specifically the audience's or specifically ours. It's always all of ours. You know what I mean? The responsibility is always joint.
Okay.
There, so when stuff happens, like if there's any confusion at a show or violence or anything that upsets the local populace, it always falls on us anyway. So we have to deal with it. It's unfortunate to have to start to try to tell people what to do outside of the concert. You know what I mean? It's we're not the government, we're just musicians, and it's enough to try to control what's going on inside the show. That in itself is difficult, and just the idea is repellent too. The idea of that we're going to now start telling people how to behave. Who has the right to do that? Certainly not us. So it's one of those things where really all we can do is open it up, turn it into a dialogue of some kind, and say, here's what they tell us. The police in this town say, unless something happens in relation to the camping or the vending scene that goes on outside the Grateful Dead shows, the Grateful Dead is not going to be able to come back to this town anymore. It's that simple. It's really, So our choice is to let you know about it, and you have the choice of either willingly stopping that kind of stuff or avoiding that kind of stuff, or else it's just there's not going to be nothing. So the choice is it's dire like that. Some places deal with it better than others, and it's not one of those things that's an entirely black and white situation. It really seems to be area sensitive. So some places where there's residential zones near a concert facility, that's kind of the worst stuff. And in the kind of places where we're playing more than one day. So like a one-shot deal is no problem. It's just like a sporting event. The audience comes, they can be as rowdy as they want. They're gone the next day. But when it's 2 or 3 days, then that's when problems start. So it really is partly us juggling the places that we appear based on availability and what kind of facilities are available, and coming to grips with this in terms of the towns on a kind of a one-on-one basis. That's really the only way to do it. So some of the towns have people who are pulling for us, say, hey, we want the Grateful Dead to come to town. It works out good for us, and maybe another part of the town is saying, hey, no, we don't want them back here no matter what. So sometimes it's that kind of thing. It's a complex deal, but we try to address them individually. Each place, each venue, and we expect for the fans to be sympathetic to whatever is required there. It's one of those, you have to, we've never had to deal with this kind of stuff before. It's like you can get so successful, but then now it's a whole other, so we're at the level now where we're topping out in terms of success, and it turns out that there's a whole bunch of new problems that are, Yeah. So either we have to define how we're going to do this by either some really incredibly creative solutions, or else we're going to have to restrict where we play, or something like play in certain centers, so that we play like on the East Coast for say 3 months at some place, and everybody from the whole area could come. There's any number of possible ways to go, but we do have to deal with it. So video becomes an alternative, and all these other things. So we're trying out what we can, because we don't want to find ourselves out of existence because we're too successful. It seems silly.
When you were a young man just getting into rock and roll, did you have any idea of the road that was before you? And are you pleased with how it's turned out?
Oh yeah, it's turned out a million times better than I could have imagined. I hoped, I think, when we started playing, I hoped for something better than just, or something more interesting than just, say, like, conventional success, And it's always been more interesting, and it hasn't been at all conventional. So I'm real happy.
Jerry, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Whew, that was a treat. I think the big bands then were the Allman Brothers, the Grateful Dead. Bruce was just coming. I'd heard of you before that, but that was my first real experience of living the Grateful Dead experience. And Deadheads. I remember a guy named Frank Urso, lacrosse player, lived across the hall from me, and he was like from New York, and he's like, we're going up to see the Deadhead, then we're going up to Uniondale, to Nassau. I'm like, wait, if you see him, why are you going to see him again? Deadheads. One word answer, right? And that was the first time I ever heard of that. He was fanatical about you guys. And that was the beginning, and all through my radio career and all that sort of stuff. The fan I said in radio, and when I first started was Casey Jones.
Right.
There were about 4 or 5 songs they'd let you, because Lee Abrams, a name you know very well, I'm sure, came in and just started paring things down. Because when I got into radio, I got into it for, hey, let me play you this record I found last night at a party. Right. That's what it's all about. Yeah. Right. And then you come in and the records had grease marks across the songs you couldn't play. I'm like, this is, what is this stuff here? So, but
Pop radio.
Exactly, and we're watching too, and we are watching.
Very carefully.
So, but it used to be so much fun to get in there and you'd play anything.
Yeah. Well, it used to be really entertaining to listen to it too.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Because you'd hear stuff you'd never heard before.
That's it.
That's always, and then, that's interesting.
Yeah.
This whole style of music I never even knew existed.
Well, there's a station down in Bethesda, well, it's not even in Bethesda anymore, WHFS in Maryland, which was a station I grew up listening to, and they would play anything. Anything, and you'd click it on, like I said, and you'd let it go for half an hour or an hour and think, And sometimes they tell you what they played, sometimes they wouldn't.
Right.
But it was always entertaining, and it made you
Yeah.
think a little bit too, because it wasn't like, oh yeah, Led Zeppelin, oh yeah, Rolling Stones. You know,
Right.
it wasn't like that.
Right.
And that's the way radio should be. Should make you think a little
Oh yeah,
bit. You know.
yeah. Well, there was that good period of time back there where I don't know, maybe it'll come back again or something.
Well, you know what,
It'll surprise everybody.
That's it. They're gonna go
Let's say it'll be
freeform.
Tremendously successful.
Yeah.
Like weird shit.
Yeah. They'll say freeform. What a concept.
Right. Right.
Tom
Right.
Donahue rises again.
Tom Donnie, there's a name I haven't heard in a while.
Yeah.
Like this? Okay. Well, my neck is fucking killing me.
Mine is too.
Yeah. So,
Only sit like this.
yeah. So, NEW. I came to NEW late in the game of freeform radio. It was like 6 years ago now. I was on with him for 3 years. Scott, great guy, the professor.
I love him.
Scott, so is happening.
Incredible.
Yeah, and Dave Herman, might you know Dave as
Yeah,
well?
yeah.
All those guys.
Yeah.
But to me, it was like, hey, going to the Vatican of rock and roll,
Oh,
with
yeah.
Scott being the Pope.
Yeah.
Because every DJ in the country, you aspire to hit NEW FM. That's the one.
Oh,
you
man,
know?
Scott was he's an amazing guy. I'll be seeing him sometime this week, probably.
Yeah.
And
Monday.
he was one of the first guys to really start supporting us in a
Yeah.
big way.
Yeah.
The Big Apple.
Yeah. Well, give him
He's a
my
great
best
guy.
when you see
Oh,
him.
I will.
You know.
He was also the first guy I ever saw who was like the consummate pro. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, he used to drink those tumblers of scotch.
That's right.
man.
He doesn't do that anymore.
No, he doesn't.
Yeah.
Standing up, and he'd cue up turntables.
Yeah.
And
NEW
commercials
FM.
and that voice,
Yeah,
and
Scott,
be there
so-
interviewing you at the same time. He was unbelievable. It was incredible to watch him. He was amazing.
Jerry, when I auditioned, so to speak, for the show, they called me up from another radio station, and so he calls everybody Fats. Hey, Fats, how you doing, Fats?
Right.
And so he said, let's go out to dinner. And so we go out to dinner, and what we did, we went from bar to bar to bar. And I'm thinking, I was drinking Heinekens, just trying to
Right.
lowball it a little bit there.
Right.
And he's drinking scotch. By the end of the night, I thought, I think I have the job, but I have no idea where I live.
Right.
I was smashed.
Right. He was amazing. Stuff like this, interviews and stuff like this. That's about it, really.
What do you like to eat?
Oh, well, last night we were going to stop at Nathan's, me and Mickey, to drown our sorrows and some hot dogs, but the place closed at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock or something. Yeah, I couldn't believe it. It's not right in New York. You should be able to get a 24-hour-a-day hot dog.
That's
I mean,
right.
come
In
on.
New York,
New
you
York. Hey. Yeah, right, well, New York is a great place to eat. Oh, I go down to Umberto's, too, in Little Italy, the clam house down there. They wanted me to get a picture there with Frank Sinatra and Pope and stuff. I haven't got around to sending them a bit of Joey Gallo.
Yes. The Crosby, Stills, and Nash have pictured them down there.
God, yeah. That's a great place to eat.
Yeah.
I mean, New York, shit. This is it for eating.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is it.
Okay, let me start asking questions here,
Okay.
and just say whatever you want as it comes out. Years. You've never done reverse questions with me? Sure, we do them. Oh, yeah. We do them.
No, we can't do it.
Yeah.
So no one told me about it.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I thought they did. No, we do that all the
I
time.
had not a clue.
Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. When you started out, the Grateful
Wait,
Dead.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay, that's
Nice.
okay. That's okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. When you started out, the Grateful Dead weren't exactly mainstream. Are the Grateful Dead mainstream in 1989?
No. No, we never were.
Okay.
Etc.
I've read definitions of the Deadheads in Time and Newsweek. You're Jerry Garcia. What's your definition of a Deadhead?
Well, they're little tiny people about this big, bulbous heads and long feet.
I'm doing this as a two-shot. Is that a problem?
What do you mean a two-shot? It should be just the back of his head and basically me.
Well,
Yeah.
it's a two-shot. That's
Yeah,
it.
sure.
I'm just checking,
Okay.
because like I said,
Okay,
do
you ready?
this.
That's
Go
okay.
ahead.
Here we go.
Hi.
There they go.
Yeah, it's
I
the
have
door.
I have two things, and then we're out of here. Okay. Okay. Two questions, and we'll get you out of here.
It's just the FBI.
Yeah, oh, that's okay, as long as it's not the IRS. You seem to take care of your fans. There seems to be a genuine love between the Grateful Dead and the Grateful Dead fans.
We need each other.
Last one.
They are nice, I must say.
They are
They're really
hey,
sweet people.
Jerry, I've seen a ton of fans and they're the best.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. When you were a young man just getting into rock and roll, did you know of the road that lay ahead of you, and are you happy with the way it turned out?
No and yes.
Thank you.
Hold on, he's listening, just a single listening shot of you.
Okay, make it fast because he's got to
Listening
go.
shot.
Oh, he can go.
Oh, he can go.
Oh, I can